Well, it's been 1 week since Easter. 1 week since the chaos and excitement. 1 week since the empty tomb. 1 week since our first Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia. It's 1 week after the resurrection. And the disciples are in the same place they were on Easter night. They are in the same room, behind the same locked doors. And now the room is filled with fear and confusion instead of sadness and despair. Some might have been afraid of Jesus himself. After all, if he was alive, as those undependable weepy women kept insisting, he probably would have had a thing or two to say about the way they'd all abandoned him. Guilt and shame at their failure might have given some of the disciples a reason to fear rebuke from the teacher they had promised to follow, no matter what. Some were afraid of the religious leaders. Certainly, if Jesus' body was gone, the high priest's henchmen would be scrambling to find it. And the first place they'd look would be here, among the Lord's closest friends and followers. A few remembered Jesus telling them that he would be killed, but that he would rise on the third day. And didn't it make sense that the religious leaders would figure one of them had taken the body to make it look like Jesus had arisen? So if the resurrection is such a big deal, such a life-changing event, why are they still stuck in the same place? What difference has the empty tomb made? How has it changed them? Has it let them see themselves and their world differently? Has it done anything for them? Doesn't look like it's made much difference. They're in the same house, behind the same locked doors as a week ago. What's changed? I wonder, 1 week after Easter, what has Christ's resurrection done for us? Is your life different? Do you see and engage in the world in new ways? What difference has the empty tomb made in your life over the last week? When I look at my life, it looks a whole lot like it did last Sunday, and the week before, and the week before that. When I look at the world, it looks pretty much the same as before. I used to hear today's gospel and be critical of the disciples. They're stuck in the same place. They should have done better than that. After all, death had been defeated. Christ is risen. Alleluia. Why aren't their lives different? And I was really asking about my own life. Why isn't my life different after Easter? Why am I stuck in the same place? I should be doing better than that. I should be living the resurrection better, more powerfully, more authentically than what I am. After all, the Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia. I've begun, however, to hear today's gospel differently from how I used to. And here's what I think today's gospel is telling me, telling all of us. Christ's resurrection is a big deal. The empty tomb is a life-changing event. The resurrection does make a difference in our lives. And it also takes time. Resurrection takes time. It's not a one-time event. It's something that we grow into. It's a process. It's a way of being and a life to be lived. By the grace of God, we evolve into resurrected people through our relationships and the circumstances of our lives. God wastes nothing. Every day we are stepping into the resurrected life, and it's not always easy, and some days are just plain hard. I wonder if we sometimes come to Easter Sunday and the empty tomb, expecting to wake up on Monday to a whole new life and world. I'm guessing that some awoke on Easter Monday to the same life and world that you had on Good Friday. I did, except I could have a sleep in. It's not because the resurrection failed, or because Jesus didn't do the Jesus thing in our lives. It's because the Jesus things take time. Maybe we need to let go of the fact of the empty tomb and start claiming the story of resurrection. There's a difference between facts and story. Facts are one-dimensional. Stories are multi-dimensional. Facts inform the mind. Stories touch the heart. Facts transmit information. Stories transform lives. Think about it like this. A fact is static, like a snapshot of a particular moment in time, whereas a story is dynamic, like a movie that takes us across time. The empty tomb is a fact. Resurrection is the story. And maybe we need to begin to understand resurrection as the movie of our life, instead of a snapshot of Christ's life. The fact of the empty tomb is not the story of the resurrection. The facts of Jesus' life are not the story of Jesus. And the facts of your life and my life are not the story of our lives. The facts are just the starting point for the story. Whatever facts you woke up to on Easter morning are simply the starting point for your story of resurrection. Too often, however, we take the facts as the entire story. And isn't that what we've done with St. Thomas? What facts come to mind when you hear his name? He was a doubter. Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe. That Thomas doubted may be the only fact that comes to mind. And it's so prevalent that we call him Doubting Thomas. What if that fact, however, is just the starting point for his resurrection? What if it's not the whole story? What if where we start is less important than where we go, where we end? Do you know the end of Thomas's story? Do you know where he died? He died in India. He was the apostle to the people of India. He brought the gospel of Christ to India. He died a martyr after he was run through with 5 spears by 5 soldiers. That doesn't sound much like a doubter, does it? It sounds like someone who grew and changed. Someone for whom the resurrection of Christ was real. Someone for whom the empty tomb made a difference. It just took a little time, as it does for most. Maybe all of us. We know doubting Thomas, but let's not forget confessing Thomas. He's in today's gospel as well. My Lord and my God. With those words, Thomas has recognised and named a new relationship, a new worldview, a new way of being. Somewhere between doubting Thomas and confessing Thomas is the story of resurrection in Thomas's life. All that stuff about doubting Thomas, the fact of his disbelief, is just Thomas's starting place. Nothing more, nothing less. It's neither good nor bad. It's a starting place. And we all have our starting places. Whatever your life is today, whatever your circumstances are, that's the starting point for your story of resurrection. So if you're dealing with deep loneliness, sorrow or loss, that's your starting point. That's the room which Christ enters. If you're locked in a house of fear, confusion or darkness, that's your starting point and the place in which Jesus stands. If illness, old age or uncertainty are facts of your life, then that's your starting point and the place in which Jesus shows up. If you feel lost, betrayed, disappointed, overwhelmed, that's your starting point and the house Jesus enters. If joy, gratitude and celebration are the facts of your life today, that's the starting point for your story of resurrection. All of those things I just described and 1,000 others are the many ways the doors of our house get locked. Whatever it might be for you, it's just the starting point. The great tragedy is not that the disciples are in the same house behind the same locked doors. It's just their starting place. The great tragedy will be if the disciples refuse to unlock the doors, refuse to open the doors, and refuse to get out of the house. What are the doors that are locked in your life? What are the things you've kept stuck in the same place? I'll say it again, it's just the starting place. Don't judge it as good or bad, right or wrong. It's where you are, and it's the place Christ shows up. It happened twice in today's gospel. Both times the disciples are in the same house behind the same locked doors, and Jesus shows up. He stands in the midst of them. The walls and the locked doors of their house could not keep Jesus out, and the walls and the locked doors of your house will not keep him out. What keeps us from recognizing Jesus when he's standing right in front of us? Is it fear? What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of Jesus himself, convinced that he would judge us for our unbelief if he stood in our midst? Are we afraid of the people outside the door, the ones who threaten our sense of safety whenever we try to talk about our faith? Those disciples who huddled in that locked room were afraid for their very lives. Unlocking the door, going out into the world to offer forgiveness of sins would have put them at great risk. Are we willing to take such a risk as that? To put our lives on the line for the sake of the gospel? He steps into the midst of our house, through the locked doors, and breathes peace and life into us. He breathes peace and hope into us. He breathes peace and courage into us. He breathes peace and strength into us. And that breath of peace is the key that unlocks the door. So take a deep breath. Take it all in. Let it fill and enliven you. Let it give you the hope, courage and strength to unlock and open the doors of your life, and then get out of the house. Open the doors to the story of your resurrection and get out of the house.